97.3 ESPN presents The Sports Bash with Mike Gill. It's time for Football at 4.
Josh Hennick here, filling in for Mike Gill here on The Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Mike Gill on vacation. I'm here hanging out with you. Football at 4 still goes on. Of course, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Like, subscribe, give that 5-star to the guys over there. Joining us on today's edition of the show, former Eagles wide receiver. He is the co-host of the Q&A podcast. He is Jason Avant, joining us right now to talk more about the Eagles and their offseason. And Jason joins us right now. Jason, how you doing today?
I'm well, and yourself? How you doing, Josh?
Not too much. First of all, how is the offseason treating you? For you guys, I know you guys are still being busy. I know you're busy with the bounce house over there and everything. So how's the NFL offseason treated you?
Everything is going well. It's exciting. The NFL keeps it going all year round. So it's always exciting for the fans. And you're trying to figure out which team you're, is going to give you the most fantasy value and all those things, which players are good. And, so it's exciting. So I love the NFL. So it's never, you never miss a beat. I did enjoy getting a few weeks off from, covering football the entire year a couple times a week. But when free agency kicks it off, it's fun. You want to see what the Eagles are going to do, and you hope they can match the teams in their progress and getting better.
Well, I'm glad to have you on today because just yesterday the Eagles did make a move that involves your position of expertise. Zach Pascal used to work with Nick Sirianni over in Indianapolis. Now he comes to Philadelphia. So what was your immediate reaction to Pascal rejoining Sirianni here?
He's a situational player, deserves a chance and has a purpose on the team. One thing that the Eagles don't have is a grunt receiver, a dirty work guy. They don't. And that guy is J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, but he doesn't give you much value when it comes to route running and catching the football and things of that nature because they don't trust him in that aspect, but they just trust him to go in and block. So the Eagles like to play a horizontal game when it comes to Jalen, Reagor, Devontae Smith, and Quez Watkins when it comes to on the perimeter extensions of the run game type plays where they throw quick screens and things of that nature. When you have a bunch of guys that weigh 170, that doesn't work well. So you get a guy that's a big fella, 210 plus and 6'2", a big dude that can hold you up in those situations and in the run game. He has some pretty outstanding blocks this year and over the last couple of years for the Colts. So he serves a purpose, but I don't want anybody that's listening to me thinking that this is the Eagles are done at this position because he just serves a purpose. He's a situational guy. We still need a playmaker on the other side of Devontae Smith.
Last year, the Eagles' veteran in that wide receiver room was Greg Ward, which I like Greg Ward. I especially like him as college quarterback at Houston, but him being the veteran doesn't say much. Does Pascal fill the void of a veteran in that room?
No, because when you have – he's still a young player, a lot of undrafted experience. He's an undrafted player, so he's not going to garner and Greg Ward was too, but Greg has played a long time in this city and has gone through some playoffs and different things of that nature with this team. And he was there with these young guys so they can kind of look up to him and they know, the role. But him coming in from a different organization is not going to be like some veteran presence that, he's not going to ignite the troops. Greg Ward can do that just fine.
Now, the Eagles were in on Allen Robinson. He got big money from the Rams.
Yeah.
Reports are that Robert Woods could have come to Philadelphia, but said, I want to go to Tennessee. Read into that, whatever you will. I don't know what to think of that. Calvin Ridley, obviously he's suspended next year, so he's not going to be available. So the Eagles missed out on some guys who would have been some major upgrades to have across from Devonta Smith. Where should they go now? What do they do now that they could have had some other guys? It just didn't work out.
You got 3 picks, right? So you got 3 picks and you have a plethora of talent at receiver in this upcoming draft. You're not going to be able to get the top echelon guys like Garrett Wilson or, Chris Olave because those guys are probably gone. Drake London, those guys. But you may get Jameis Williams that got hurt at Alabama. you may get an opportunity to get a player like that with one of those 3 picks. And I think that's the way that you should go if you're the Eagles. But I'm going to tell you something else, Josh, that's even more perplexing. It's not perplexing, but it's scary for a fan, is that when you're talking about free agency, there's no ties to no other team. So it's on the players. It's the player's choice, the player's volition in order to, for them to make that decision. And it's in their case, they're going to leave with the best looking girl that's available from the player's position.
Right.
And what the Eagles are is not the best looking girl. We've gained a few pounds and we're not looking at it that intriguing to free agents this time around. And that's what we need to be focusing on as well, is that a lot of these quarterbacks, Deshaun Watson, Russell Wilson, a lot of these guys did not want to come here. The Eagles had just as much as everyone else. They didn't want to come here because the roster isn't the best. The general manager, and not general manager, but the front office hadn't done the best drafting. And we haven't done well for ourselves over the last couple of years, and it's hurting us in free agency.
Former Eagles wide receiver Jason Avant joining us here on Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast and InsideTheBirds.com. Jason, that's an amazing point you brought up, because Jeff Mosher was saying something very similar yesterday. You played under Andy Reid. During the Andy Reid era, dudes wanted to come here. This was a destination to come to. So how much do you think is the instability of the coaching position, the instability of the quarterback position? How much do you think that goes into guys saying, I don't know if I want to go there, because when Andy was here for like almost 15 years.
Well, yeah, and the quarterback position, you can count on the quarterback position not losing you the football game. You can count on the quarterback position to at least be a playoff brand of football when Coach Reid was here. Now, and even when Doug was here, you can figure out that they're at least going to get you to the playoffs, the quarterback position. And it's not just the quarterback position, but when you're talking about bringing in free agency receivers, the receivers are looking at a few things when they're coming in, especially when they're free agency, and they're sought after, highly sought after free agents. 1, can I win there? 2, can I get the ball? 3, will I get an opportunity for a second or third contract here? And those things have to do with the quarterback. And if they don't trust that the quarterback can get the ball to them, they're not coming there. They're going to go to a situation where it's more advantageous for their career to continue to thrive, and they can make more money and win at a different place. And so that's something that we have to address as an organization, and also our roster. Top end, down, we're not 1 or 2 players away. And that's what free agency is about. It's about how can I bring a really good, talented, really high talented player to my organization that can put me in the Super Bowl conversation. We're multiple players away. So every player that knows that is saying, hey, I can't, do as much as I want to with this team. They're 4 or 5 players away, not 1 player. And that's what they're saying to us. They're speaking loud, and that's what free agents do. They tell you the truth.
Now, one of the things we know is that, speaking of the wide receiver position specifically, one of the things you and Quentin Michael talked about on Q&A a lot was, the nitty-gritty of the game. And one of the things I heard you guys talk a lot about is X and Z and Y with receiver. Nick Sirianni believes, not that you or I believe it, but Sirianni believes Devonta Smith can be the number 1 receiver and Quez Watkins can be the number 2. So I ask you, Jason Avant, do they still need an X receiver, or can Devonta be that X and Quez be that Y?
So you're talking about, so for the fans that are listening to this or watching this, X receiver is the guy he's the guy that lines up on the ball, the split end. And usually that guy has less space between the defender when it's time for them to press him. So he has to be an efficient, release escape artist at the line of scrimmage because he doesn't have as much space. The flanker or the Z receiver can be off the ball. That's the guy that goes in motion and can get assistance when it comes to being off the ball, when it comes to getting open. And Devonta Smith is definitely would be a flanker or a Z receiver in this offense, right? Because he's so small, he's going to need a little assistance getting open. Quez is slight too. So can Quez master his releases in order to get open down the field? I believe that Quez is best suited for outside. For some reason, they started to put him at slot in order to get him on the field earlier this year, and he was kind of out of position, but he still made do. So do I think that it can happen? Yes, but it's going to take some tutelage. And it's nothing like getting taught by someone that has tested and true battles in the NFL that could have helped them. And they had opportunities. Like I said, free agents didn't want to come here. Do I think they still need someone else, even as a young player? I don't think that you can pass on the Jameson Williams. Like if you get a guy like that falls to you, that runs a 4.2 and that has elite route running ability, which Devontae Smith has, but he's in a Tyreek Hill type of body, you can't pass on that. I don't care how good Quez Watkins is. And you move on from the other ones, but you make that your 3 and roll with it.
The one guy we haven't mentioned is the other first-round pick, Jalen Reagor. Is there hope for him? Do you believe there's more that can be brought out of him? Do you think that there is still a future for him in this offense?
Not in this offense. Like I love Jalen Reagor as a person. I know him. I had a chance to coach there a few years back when he first got drafted. I really didn't coach much, but I was there as a sounding board. But I was there, and so I like him. I believe that he has a lot to offer this game. I just think that the things that bother him is going to happen a lot in this city, right? The comments, the Justin Jefferson comparison, other guys they could have drafted. They hold you accountable in this city. When you drop the ball, you lose a game. All of those things get under his skin. And I don't think that Philadelphia may be the best fit for him. I think he may need new scenery. And I think that this is going to be the most value that you're going to be able to get for him is at this point, because there's still offensive coordinators, receiver coaches that think that this guy is definitely salvageable. And he is salvageable. He just may need a different offense. He may need to be in a Kyle Shanahan type of offense where you can get the ball to him on the perimeter. And that's half the football game, is just getting him getting the ball in his hands, right? So he may need something like that, and I think that he can thrive in this league. I just think that the city is so down on him, and his mentality and his ego doesn't do well with that portion of it.
You mentioned Jameson Williams earlier for wide receiver from Alabama. The dude's a stud. So obviously the Eagles get their hands on him. You go get him. But let me ask you about another guy from the SEC.
Okay.
I've heard a lot of draft guys who I've talked to mention George Pickens from Georgia.
Yep.
Is that a guy you would say if the Eagles got him, he makes sense for this Sirianni offense?
He's a big dude, right? So he fills a lot of boxes. He's a 6'3", 4'7" guy. He's 200 pounds. He's bigger than all the receivers we have, with the exception of, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, right? So he fits that mold and that build. Do I think that he's been hurt a bunch?
Yeah.
Right. So he's been hurt a lot in college. So there's not a bunch of tape on this guy. He does have NFL pedigree, his dad being Carl Pickens. Right. So there is some pedigree there. And for me, watching him as a route runner, I think there's some stiffness. I think that he's a good player when it comes to getting the ball in his hands and beasting guys. But there's going to be a nimbleness that you want if you're going to be picking that high. And I don't necessarily know if he has the ability to make you move out of your spot. I always say that a receiver that can make you move left and right as a defender is going to have the most success in NFL. It's not the guys that are using power. It's not the guys that are jumping over people. It's the guys that make you move left and right. And when you think about the top receivers in this game, Devontae Adams, he can make you move left and right, and he can have a clear path straight up the field. Keenan Allen, Calvin Ridley. When you think about all of these guys, a lot of these top upper echelon guys, when it comes to route running, they make you move left and right, and he doesn't have that ability.
Former Eagles wide receiver Jason Avant, co-host of the Q&A podcast on the Inside the Birds podcasting network, joining us here for Football at 4 here on 97.3 ESPN FM. Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill on a Tuesday. One more draft guy I want to ask you about. 6'3", 225. Treylon Burks.
The kid from Arkansas.
Yeah. I watched a lot of Arkansas this year, part because I had some money on it. But the other reason was because, I saw Burks and I was like, this kid, he's an athlete. He's a big stud.
Yeah.
But I don't know what he looks like in the NFL. What have you seen? What do you think he could be?
It's hard. It's so hard to gauge it. It's so hard because he's such a great athlete that's been played at multiple positions, from running back to, everything for the University of Arkansas. Like, they just want to get the ball in his hands.
Right.
It's very, very hard for a dude that's 225, right? And that's his quoted weight. And listen, everybody, when they give you the quoted weight on paper, it's usually a lot less than what he actually is. So by the time you get to the NFL, he's gonna be 235. So I would be worried about that. But he's a great athlete. When I look at him, I see a guy like Deebo Samuel. That's the first thing that comes to your mind. Like a guy like AJ Brown, a big, powerful dude that can run through tackles and make plays happen. The thing that scares you is that he runs a 4.55, right? So you don't necessarily know. It equates really well when it comes to watching him on film. But if he isn't that dynamic playmaker down the field and with his ball hands, because guys are so much faster, is he going to pan out? And then he's raw. So it's an experiment. And I think, I don't know if this coaching staff has the experience to deal with that type of player here. And that's my 2 cents. We have a bunch of young coaches, Jonathan Gannon, Nick Sirianni. These are first-year guys. It takes a guy that has some experience in order to work with players like that, because they're a special talent. So you need someone with a lot of years, with a lot of different ability to use players. I'll say this, like Darren Sproles with the Chargers was a lot different Darren Sproles with the Saints. Right? We knew Darren Sproles was a good kick returner, and he was a good situational back, but we didn't know how good Darren Sproles was until he got to New Orleans.
Right.
And that had to do with experience, and that had to do with Sean Payton being able to see something in him. And I think, Treylon Burks is that type of player that needs an experienced coach.
It's funny you mentioned Deebo Samuel, because you just earlier mentioned Jalen Reagor if you went to a Kyle Shanahan offense, and you kind of just started going down.
I'm a fan of Kyle Shanahan, but go ahead.
No, I'm a fan too. Don't get me wrong. But the reason I'm bringing it up is because, can you dig a little deeper into the difference between a Shanahan, a guy who's been around the league like he has, and someone like Sirianni, who said he hasn't been doing this as long? Give the audience a better understanding of why that difference is important, that experience.
Well, you got to understand, so Kyle is a son of a coach that grew up with one of the best run games in the history of the NFL, right? So his dad's run game has made a lot of dudes money. We thought that Clinton Portis is one of the best running backs in the history of the NFL in Denver because of Shanahan's run game. So he brings that element to it, and him running with that. So he has a long lineage and history, and the way that he used players and personnels in order to throw things off is just out of this world. There's a lot of sets that you just have to practice for, that you spend time on, that he's only going to run 10% of the time, but it's something new. He's figuring out ways to get guys up to the second level with the offensive line that's conventional. Instead of pulling the guard, let me pull the tackle. He's playing at a different pace and a different level. And each week he understands that guys are going to scout him, and he's coming up with new information and new stuff for the opposing defensive coordinator. Now, Nick Sirianni has some experience, and he's been around with a bunch of guys, but he has a system that he grew up in. So he's going to be limited to that system for a while until he gets more and more information around him. It's going to happen, but it's just that Kyle Shanahan had the pleasure of being a coach's kid, seeing this game for years and years and years before he got into it. Now you can't compare that. It's just, that's a priceless comparison for me to have a home field advantage of my dad being an NFL coach for so long.
He's former Eagles wide receiver Jason Avant. He's the co-host of the Q&A podcast on the Inside the Birds podcasting network. And, of course, Football at 4 brought to you by Inside the Birds podcast and InsideTheBirds.com. Jason, really appreciate you jumping on today. I feel like I always learn from you and Quentin Michael every time you guys do the pod. I appreciate you jumping on, and enjoy the rest of the offseason.
Oh, I appreciate that, Josh. You take it easy, buddy.